Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Today, we're going to be taking a look at our good boy Ororon, who is the brand new 4-star character in Genshin Impact. So first things first, we're going to go through quite a few things with Ororon, starting with his exploration capabilities outside of Natlan. And outside of Natlan, look guys, I got to be completely honest, this is what he does. You can press space, you hop in the air, you float for about 2 or 3 seconds, and you spend a bunch of stamina to do that. Yeah, this is not really an ability you're probably going to be using very often. However, in Natlan itself, this is where things get really interesting, because once you start flying, especially in combination with Chasca, you are able to alternate between the two of them at the cost of a bit of, this stamina as you're gliding, maybe some phlogiston meter here and there. And between the two of them, these two can go for a very, very long time. But oh man, can we shoot the bird? Can we shoot the bird? There's no way. I'm not that good of a shot, but now of course you guys aren't going to be watching my videos to see how great of a flyer a character like Ororon is. So instead, let's actually check out some of his damaging capabilities. And we're going to start off with this team. Now, the reason why I want to start with this team is because this way I don't have to go back to this build to showcase it anymore. But we're starting off with a free-to-play friendly raw DPS Ororon setup with the 4-piece Obsidian Codex with decent stats. It's a little bit of overcrit and, a few wasted stats here and there, but, it's all good. And yeah, so his talents are at 1, 9, and 9. Now, the goal here is to get Ororon into Night Soul state in order for him to actually do some of his damage output. So first, we're going to knock down our Regisfine friend, our good old boy, the Regisfine friend. So now we're going to apply Hydro on it, along with a bit of persistent Hydro. Now we are in Night Soul state, and we can see we're doing some damage, right? This registers as damage, and with the help of electro-charged as well. And we can see, I gotta be honest, the raw damage is a little bit better than I expected, but of course we definitely had the help of electro-charged, which, definitely makes a big difference. Oh my goodness, I died. So here we go. I've switched Ororon over to a support build, this time with high crit rate and Favonius Bow, as well as the 4-piece Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. So how exactly does Ororon's kit actually work? Well, he generates 40 Night Soul points when a Night Soul Burst is triggered, which, as a quick reminder, Night Soul Burst triggers when there is a Natlan character in your party and anyone does elemental damage, and this has a set cooldown based on how many Natlan characters you have in your party. Anyway, then after using his elemental skill, when other party members Hydro or Electro attacks hit opponents, Ororon will gain 5 Night Soul points. And he can gain these 5 Night Soul points 10 times over these 15 seconds after using his skill. So basically just use Ororon's elemental skill and then hit enemies with other characters' Hydro and Electro attack in order to generate up to 90 Night Soul points for him. Now the next part of his passive explains how he spends those Night Soul points, which is pretty much when a nearby enemy takes electro-charged reaction damage or Night Soul aligned damage dealt by other nearby characters. Ororon will consume 10 Night Soul points, enter Night Soul's Blessing state, and trigger the Hypersense effect, which is this additional little lightning bolt that deals a bit of Night Soul line damage, scaling off of 160% of Ororon's attack to at most 4 nearby targets. Ororon is definitely one of the better characters who is quite compatible with the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. And in particular for Ororon, for him to trigger it, he actually needs to enter Night Soul state, which can be activated by an electro-charged like that. And we can see here, I'm actually not sure if that hit actually gave the scroll buff.
Nope.
That it did not. It only gave 12% Hydro damage bonus. So in a situation like this, his burst will give the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City buff. Okay, I think I found out why his skill here did not apply the Cinder City buff. And please correct me down in the comments below if I'm not right about this, but I believe it is because his skill actually shares an ICD with his first Ascension passive's Hypersense effect. So even though his skill triggered electro-charged, which therefore brings him into his Night Soul's Blessing state, the Hypersense that is triggered right after that hits the enemy didn't actually apply electro, at least as far as I can tell, because it shares the same ICD tag with his elemental skill, and because it has default standard ICD, this means that his first Ascension Hypersense did not actually apply electro. So in this situation against a single target, you actually need to use his skill, then his elemental burst in order to trigger the Cinder City buff. Yeah, let me know if my theory about this is correct or not. So his skill will bounce between targets, I believe up to 3 times, or is it up to 3 individual targets? Let's take a look. Okay, I gotta be completely honest, it was really hard to tell exactly what's going on. And wait, why are they still taking damage? What's going on? Yo! Okay, so yeah, they have... Oh, the water is electrified. So to answer the question of, does the skill bounce between 2 targets? No, it does not. It just hits each target 1 time. Now, the next thing is his elemental burst, which unfortunately has a 3-second ICD when it comes to applying electro. We can see there that we've had 2 overloadeds. There's the 3rd. And yeah, so because of that, only 3 overloadeds, I believe. His burst also taunts nearby enemies, which is a nice little bit of additional utility. So his second passive also provides some pretty nice support with if he uses his skill and it hits an enemy for the next 15 seconds. When you hit an enemy with a normal, charged, or plunging attack, your character will generate 3 energy. And if Ororon is off-field, Ororon will also generate 3 energy. And you can do this 3 times per use of his skill, which means a total of 9 energy for an on-field character and 9 energy for Ororon. In summary, support Ororon provides 40% elemental damage via the Cinder City, 9 flat energy for the on-field character, an AoE taunt via his elemental burst, and either Favonius particles or elegy buffs. And yes, he is a good user of the elegy for the end. And at Constellation 6, he can provide up to 30% attack as well. So yeah, this is a very reasonable set of buffs for your team, especially for a Constellation 0 4-star character. So here's one really quick example, and I used Ayato because his damage is more consistent than a character like Neuvillette for a side-by-side comparison. We can see that the Scroll of Cinder City is providing Ayato a small damage gain up to 30,243 damage in comparison to using Fischl on the right for 25,950 damage, making it a modest but still reasonable 16.5% increase to Ayato's damage thanks to the Cinder City buff. Now, one quick team I wanted to just give you guys a quick demo for is this Chasca, Bennett, Furina, Ororon team. And I find this team to be particularly funny because there is a pretty thick layer of RNG involved when it comes to getting the proper Cinder City buff. And this is because of Chasca's second passive, which shoots a random Petch element bullet, essentially, which, you know, applies elements, and that makes it a bit difficult to guarantee the Cinder City buff. So for both Pyro and Electro, the Cinder City buff will still apply. So there we go. We got Electro that time, and now we should have the Pyro buff as well as the Electro buff, the 40%. So I know this is a bit confusing, but yeah, so let's try to get another bullet. There we go. Now we got a Hydro bullet. And we can see on Bennett's page that we did not get any buff. We did not get the Hydro damage buff. We did not get the Electro damage buff from Ororon. So what actually happened here is that in this case, Bennett used his elemental skill, which Chasca fired a Hydro bullet to remove the Pyro. So now the enemy has no element on it, and Ororon will just hit the enemy with Electro on an enemy that has no element on it, therefore not triggering a reaction for the 4-piece Hero of Cinder City. Let's just do a quick team rotation example. So we can see there that we did get the Cinder City buff. So let's go ahead and do the rest of the rotation. And there we go. Okay, yeah. I was trying to actually get Chasca to plunge, but unsurprisingly, we were able to single cycle our big pudgy friend here with this team. Not sure why this rotation did a little bit less damage than usual, but it's really not a big deal. Oh, this is why it's because Chasca wasn't even on the 4-piece obsidian codex. Oh my goodness, someone stole her artifact here. Okay, let's actually do the rotation this time with Chasca having equipped the proper stuff here. So we did get the Electro Bullet, which means we are good. So this should do a lot more damage, hopefully. Oh yeah. Yep. It almost died to 3 shots. All right, so another team I want to showcase for Ororon is a much more budget-friendly team for Neuvillette. Now, of course, my Neuvillette is at Constellation 6, so this is not going to be an accurate reflection of his power level, but more so I wanted to demonstrate how you can get all the buffs from this team up and running as expected. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. We're gonna go for the Hydro Infusion. Now we're going to go for this. And I think that should be it. We are 123.8% and ready to go. And now we can just blast our pudgy friend to little bitty pieces. Okay, I guess he still survived that. But yeah, there we go. Alright, and this next team actually surprised me quite a lot in terms of its performance. I was actually really impressed by it. And it's actually a free-to-play friendly taser team. Now, the damage distribution is all over the place. Ororon is built with the Cinder City to buff, I guess, electro and hydro damage, the raw electro-hydro damage that Xingqiu does. And despite even the alligator resisting hydro, we still were able to take it out in a very reasonable amount of time. And these two rock golems are interesting because not only does, electro-charge and all this AoE work quite well between the two of these enemies, but I believe these ones, unlike the other, I think these ones don't have perpetual pyro on them. And that actually does give us a problem later. So here, I'm trying to do the 4 charged attacks for official in order to get the full buff from the Abyssal Moon. I have no idea if it's worth it. It's probably not. But, whatever. All's good that ends well, or whatever the saying is. But yeah, Taser is now in a much better spot in comparison to before. Also because of the buff to Taser damage, which is certainly non-negligible. Now, Taser's not going to be like an insane amount of damage. But the fact that it was buffed to do roughly, I believe, 66.7% more damage or so means that this type of Ororon Taser variation team is much more viable, even more viable than it was before. Well, obviously, it never existed before because Ororon didn't exist before, but you guys get my point, right? So yeah, it's a nice little buff to Taser now. These two enemies were actually quite problematic because all we could really trigger with Ororon as well as with Fischl was overloaded, and I'm assuming these guys resist pyro like crazy. So overloaded is probably not the reaction you really want to be doing against them, and also problematically, this means that Ororon can't enter Night Soul state, and he also cannot do his additional lightning bolts, which actually make up the majority of his damage and electro application. So yeah, definitely a bit of a problem, but after we took out those two, which took quite a long time, this next enemy is perfect electro-charged bait, as it just melts as we take out his little crocodile friend, especially since there's 2 of them for a while. That gives us a lot of time to do a ton of damage with this team. So yeah, the fact that this electro-charged, very free-to-play friendly team managed to 9-star Abyss 12 like that, or at least get, clear each of their sides within 90 seconds, although cutting it close, was very impressive to me, and I was actually very surprised by its performance. And yeah, Ororon will certainly get a bit better with his personal damage output as you get his constellations, which is nice. And finally, his Constellation 6 actually provides even more support for him, providing up to 30% attack for characters that are on field, I believe. So Ororon, in my opinion, is a very solid electro character, especially for a 4-star character. In a way, he kind of reminds me of AoE Fischl, and in particular, he is much more catered towards the electro-charged reaction, able to contribute reasonable buffs, energy for the team, as well as non-negligible damage and decent electro application. So overall, I think Ororon's design as a 4-star character is great, and if you like what you saw here today, well, do keep in mind that you know, building Pity in Genshin Impact is a bit risky, but you know, if you want to go for him and you don't mind getting Chasca, well, there you go. That's my honest review of Ororon. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.